All right, good evening, everybody. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Sean Callan.
Here.
Julie Chetney.
Here.
Tom Chiappa.
Here.
David Crisafulli.
Here.
Jim McKenzie's here. Kristen Norfleet.
Here.
And Sean Onmock.
Here.
Michael Pastella. All right, if we can all stand for the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so there's nobody signed up for floor to the public, so we're on to our acknowledgement sections with Tom Chiappa.
Are you ready, Matt? Let's go spanning the district. All right, so here are some of the great things that happened in the district since we last met. We're going to start over at Fitzhugh Park. FPS hosted its annual Career Day on Friday, April 5th. All the students got to learn about, interact with, and meet a variety of local professionals. Students spent the entire week learning about many different trades and even had a spirit week culminating in students dressing up as their future career self. A special thank you to Burritt Auto for their $500 donation, and they are looking forward to their annual Career Day next year. And I just want to give a shout out to Career Day supporters, Mary Beth Fierro from the middle school, Cheryl Beck from the middle school, Larry Miller from Gino and Joe's Pizza, Rich Burritt from Burritt Auto, Charnel Ford or Charnelay Ford for a Schneider truck, Judge Tim Kerwin, His Honor the Mayor Robert Cordino, Justin Delia, Oswego Police Department, Ben Miller, our own SRO from the school district, Jennifer Lucerdo from the Youth Bureau, Jessica Disquist, thank you, Dickwist, I'll get it right, Jessica Dickwist from Oswego State, and Chris Alloy Weiss from Vespian Communications. And we'll stay over at Fitzhugh Park, where FPS UPK had a fun event for the solar eclipse. After reading a book and talking about what would happen during the eclipse, UPK decided to have a snacktivity last week. They made their own solar eclipses by using pretzel sticks and golden Oreos for the sun and chocolate Oreos for the moon. But there's no evidence of anything afterwards because it was all eaten. Then we move over to the high school. The Oswego High School held their final pep rally of the year, recognizing winter and spring athletes on Friday, April 5th. The event provided an opportunity for the student body to come together and participate in games along with the staff. The national anthem was sung by the chamber singers, and there were performances by the Winter Guard and the cheerleading team. This event was sponsored by the Student Council. And while we're on it, the aforementioned Winter Guard back at the high school. After months of hard work, the Oswego Winter Guard finished an undefeated season by winning their class at state championships last weekend. They celebrated their victorious season with a community performance on Friday, April 12th. Congratulations for all their hard work and an amazing season. We'll keep it right at the high school, and the Student Council held an American Red Cross blood drive on April 11th in the theater. This event provides our community with essential donations, and we had 21 students participate. And I think that's a wonderful thing, and thank you to Student Council for doing that because it's needed. I think there's always blood needed and resources, so thank you very much. Staying, the high school and the middle school participated in Tech Wars at SUNY Oswego. OHS and OMS technology classes recently traveled to SUNY Oswego to compete in Tech Wars. Oswego was very well represented, taking home first place in the CO2 dragster for both middle and high school, and second in the cardboard boat regatta. I want to do that. Just sit in a cardboard boat. And over to the middle school, the OMS musical. The cast and crew of the Oswego Middle School shared the results of 10 weeks of intense rehearsal on April 5th and April 6th with performances of High School Musical. The performances featured the largest cast yet for an OMS musical, with over 50 actors using their talents to tell the story from the 2006 Disney Channel original movie of the same name. This year's musical feature featured high-energy choreography, challenging and memorable music, and for the first time, a full pit band. Congratulations, guys. And now we'll head over to Charles E. Riley. Singer-songwriter Jared Campbell, a native of New York, visited Riley School to showcase his talents. Jared is a highly acclaimed children's singer whose talent is abundant on social media. He sings about good character and what students need to be successful in life. and the annual musical Willy Wonka, which was performed recently for 3 different showtimes. The first 2 performances were widely attended, evening shows for the families and community, and the final show was performed for the entire school. And we were going to end our tour around the district in Minetto. Minetto teachers gathered at our monthly data meetings. Together, they review student data, talk about best instructional practices, and set goals. These collaborative and meaningful conversations help all of our students continue to grow academically. Minetto 5th graders researched extreme weather. Students created presentations using Canva, Book Creator, Google Slides, or created a 3D model of weather. Each student shared their research and learned with their classmates. And a big thank you to the teachers and the students for all that hard work. And that's just some of the good stuff happening in the district.
Thank you very much, Tom. Next up is Superintendent's Report. Dr. Kilmer.
Okay, today is the day in which the Board of Education needs to adopt our budget for the 24-25 school year. And so we've spent about the last 6 weeks kind of methodically going through the budget from administrative to capital of a program, kind of tied all that together, including talking about revenues. And so I'm going to recap a lot of what we talked about the last time we were together. And then address any questions that you all might have. Again, from the very beginning, our budget guidelines, I introduced to you the very first time we started talking about budget, but we have to be fiscally sound, again, focused on our taxpayers, understanding that our taxpayers have needs and we can't be going unnecessarily to them and asking for additional tax increase. And so we understand that. We got to be flexible, have flexibility within that budget to address unexpected items, be adaptive, and of course, meet the cash requirements necessary to operate our organization. Budget development should be focused on our students and student programming. Focus on providing for a safe and secure school environment and facilities, providing experiences both curricular and extracurricular that support the varied interests of our students. Of course, increasing accessibility and our appropriate staffing to support all of our district's needs, but most importantly, social and emotional learning, mental health supports, and of course, support diverse academic needs and support our long and short-term fiscal goals. So to recap, remember this is a 3-part budget. Our administrative budget, there is a slight decrease, about a $13,000 decrease from year to year. This is just a quick breakdown to show you what the big categories are within that. You see a slight reduction in salaries, a slight reduction in what we feel we'll have in the BOCES administrative side of their budget, and then some slight increases. That contractual piece in there, a big piece of that is our SROs and adding 2 additional SROs. Our capital budget summary, again, you're looking at about a $1.5 million increase from year to year. There is a slight decrease in our salaries line. All the others are pretty much stagnant. Remember, I mentioned this at our last meeting, that large bump, that $1.5 million bump under debt service, that's our bond payment. Okay, that bond anticipatory note, again, that goes directly to our projects. These come up periodically, and they're just a part of that process to address our large facility projects. So that's what that increase is. Programming budget, again, just to show you kind of the, again, generalized breakdown. Again, the one area just to bring your attention to, one significant area, and I'll come back to that. We'll talk more about the benefits piece. But remember, we had the original budget under the 23-24 for medical was closer to around 17 million we were budgeting, and we've spent about 20 million. So there was a $3 million difference between what we had originally budgeted for and what we are ultimately paying as a result of some, very large claims, as we are self-insured, and that happens sometimes. But those are just a couple of the pieces. Again, you'll see some of the increases there. So counseling services, you see that what looks like a 20% increase. Remember, there were 5 positions that were originally funded with federal monies that we're bringing over into the general fund. So that addresses that piece. You'll notice that 38%, 39% in psychology or psychologist services. Remember, we're looking to add a district psychologist, plus there was another psychologist position that was originally funded through federal monies, and so that's being pulled into the general fund as well. So that's why you're seeing these things in there, those increases. These are our benefit summary. So these are our benefits across the board when you're talking about for our employee benefits. And remember that medical, Medicare reimbursement, that's what I was addressing before. That $3 million difference between what we had budgeted for and what we are ultimately paying this year, again, because of the claims that have come forward this year that we did not expect. And so, again, bringing us back to the 3-part budget. Again, this year, we're looking at a budget of $112 million. Again, I talked a lot about trying to focus in on the percentage of our budget that we're dedicating to each of those 3 main components, and trying to maintain that 15, 10, and 75 as close to those as possible. And we've done that. We see a slight decrease in the administrative. You see that slight increase in capital because of that band payment. And again, you do see that increase in program as well. And again, program very much focused on our students and student programming. I showed this graphic the last time as well. And again, this just highlights the history of the district. And the district has done a good job of trying to maintain those percentages throughout its history here. And you can see that in the historical trends in that 3-part budget. Our revenues, again, these are projections. Remember, revenues are often not finalized until over summer or sometimes even until fall that we're really getting our true numbers. So these are our estimates, our projections. And again, this shows the outline of about an $8.8 million increase in total revenues. But remember, part of that is asking for a 3.17% increase in our tax levy, which is about $856,000 we're asking for our community, an increase from year to year. Again, this just shows the breakdown of the reserves. Again, I think that's a really important, again, for transparency to ensure that our community sees that we, one, have reserves, that they are healthy reserves, that we're not stowing away money and not utilizing reserves or being irresponsible. But the district has done an excellent job of trying to make sure there are appropriate reserves in case we run into some fiscal issues in the future. Anytime we're building a budget, we're not only building a budget for the next year, but we're also thinking 2 years out, 3 years out, 5 years out. We have started to do some long-range fiscal planning. I've been working along with Mr. Colucci in the business office with some individuals to kind of help us in taking a look at some of those long-term projections. And I do have some concerns about what those projections look like, especially for our revenues in year 2 from now, 3 from now, 4 from now. And we really have to be thoughtful about that as we build every single one of our budgets. Because again, we're setting ourselves up not just for next year, but for the next 3 to 5 years. And we have to be very mindful of that. One part of this budget that is not typical, that we have not done previously, is what we call capital outlay. Capital outlay are small projects. We get aid on those back in the following year, but it allows the district to take care of some facility needs by getting aid back. And so the cap is $100,000 to get that full amount of aid in the following year. We can't exceed that, and we can have conversations about exceeding that maybe in the future. But once you go over that $100,000, then aid is spread out over a longer period of time. And so it will be one of those things that we would have to have a long conversation about. How do we budget that in a way that makes sense for our programming, but make sure we don't create an unbalanced process. And so I'll talk to you more about that as we start talking more about facilities planning in the future as well. But this year's project, we've tapped Riley Elementary School because there are some exterior doors that really need some assistance. And it's a very important piece that we try to get done as soon as possible. So again, the 24-25 tax levy that I am presenting to you and asking for your approval is a 3.17 increase, which is again approximately $856,000 increase in the levy from year to year. I showed you this the last time that we were together, and again, this just illustrates historically our what we have gone out with and when it comes to tax levy increases versus inflation. As you can see, we have not kept up with inflation. If anything, we are far below inflation, and that compounds over time. And in the next few years, that could ultimately come back and make things a little bit more difficult for us when we start running into shortfalls in, say, foundation aid or other state aids that we do expect to come our way. I did, again, mention this last time. Well, what happens when we bring a budget forward and the voters do not approve of that tax levy increase? We have two options. Option one, we can come back together, develop a new budget, and then bring that forward to the community. If they vote that down again, or if we choose, you move to contingency. And contingency is a zero. There is no tax levy increase, but then there are some limitations. Again, non-health or safety or preservation facilities related equipment, community or non-school use of facilities may not be granted. In other words, there can't be any cost whatsoever, indirect, direct to the community for using facilities. And then transfer to capital items would be restricted. Unless there was health or safety, we wouldn't be able to do them. So to summarize, and these are the big points that I really want to emphasize, and this is in my mindset of how we approach the budgeting process. We wanted the budget to be balanced, and remain within the tax cap. In other words, we didn't exceed the tax cap, and therefore don't need a supermajority over 60. So a simple majority is what we need. So it stays under the tax cap. The tax levy is 3.17% increase. It maintains our commitment to social and emotional well-being of our students. I heard from the very beginning when I arrived, safety and security, the thought exchange for our strategic planning, talked a great deal about that. We addressed that by adding 2 additional SROs. Our partnership with Oswego City Police Department has been wonderful up to this point. In my conversations with the police chief and our other officers, there's absolutely a need for additional officers, especially to help and support our families at our elementary schools, as we do have 5 and only 1 officer that's trying to serve all of those families. So this will provide us the opportunity to better serve those families and our community. Adding a district psychologist and social worker, again, focused on those mental health, well-being, emotional health pieces that, again, were a priority that was communicated to me by many when I first arrived. And then, of course, investing in facility upgrades. Our facilities absolutely continue to need attention, and that's what we're focused on. And then a big piece is preserving the program that we have. We had 27 positions that were all funded by federal programs that went away. And so the only way to maintain those programs or to remain that staffing level is to bring them over into the general fund. And again, those 27 positions included 17 teaching assistants, 5 counselors, 4 special education teachers, and 1 school psychologist. All of those positions are being preserved. Again, in the focus on the needs of our students. I'm not sure if you've paid attention, but there are definitely some districts that are in the news that are cutting positions because that is the situation that they're in. I believe we've presented a balanced budget that addresses the priorities of the district, the needs of our students, while also trying to be responsive to our community and not asking for more than we need. And we're able to maintain our staffing levels at this time. And so I'm thankful for that. The proposition summary, just when it comes to voting day on May 21st, Proposition 1 will be the budget. Proposition 2 will be Board of Education members. Proposition 3 will be the student ex officio member. Again, that'll be on the ballot every other year. They're not voting for the student. It's simply approval to allow the position to be a part of the Board of Education. Purchase of buses. I didn't explain this the last time we were together, but just to give you a better picture of what that looks like. While the cost of the buses is about $1.5 million, the actual cost to the district annually is closer to about $37,000. Why? Because of aid, and we're talking about a 90% transportation aid back to the district. And then because of our replacement plan, we have a higher trade-in value or a higher expected trade-in value for the buses that we are replacing. And so that's about $20,000 per bus. And so, again, I just wanted to be clear as to the district is not writing a check for $1.5 million for buses. The actual cost on an annual basis, again, is approximately $36.5. And then, of course, number 5 is the public library. Again, we don't set the public library rates. We are there and simply provide that opportunity for them to be on the ballot. But it's not part of the district's business. The big dates today. Today is budget approval day. And then on May 7th, it is our budget hearing. And then on the 21st is our budget vote. Questions?
All right. Certainly appreciate the time that you and Pete have put into this. A question that I have, and we've talked about it, is how the school district got to an over budget situation this year. And there were a couple extreme situations, but are we going to be able to inform and can we continue to communicate to the taxpayers that we're not going to find ourselves in the same position and how we prevent that from happening? You talk about reserves a little bit, but when we put this budget forward for 24-25, it's like, is this what it's going to be, or are we going to be at plus $4 million? Like,
Right.
what, how are we going to not have that happen? So I'd like to be able to speak to our community about that.
Yeah, and so, Pete and I have talked a lot about that. And so our approaches are a little bit different. And so I think we were a little bit more aggressive in our estimates of expected costs. Because I would much rather come to you at the end of the year and say, we didn't spend the amount we had budgeted for, and therefore can put money in reserves, can focus on additional programming for student health and welfare. And so Pete and I have absolutely taken a slightly different approach. We escalated healthcare in particular. And again, healthcare is one of those, when you're self-funded, it's unpredictable because it is driven by health claims. And so just like your and my health is unpredictable, when you take the totality of not only our current employees, but our retirees that are also a part of the program, that unpredictability can vary that much more. We believe that the adjustments that we've made in budgeting will account for that. And I feel the budget that I've presented to you today will be reflective of what we will spend, and again, specifically what we need for the 24-25 school year. Did you have anything, Pete, that you wanted to add to that?
You know, only to reinforce the fact that we're looking at estimates constantly throughout the year. That's what the budget is. You put in you propose what you believe based on experience and trends that you've seen, what things will cost from year to year. The health insurance thing is it's almost like witching a well. It's really hard to know what's going to happen with people covered under our plan, who are our families and our neighbors and everything else. And we want to make sure that the money is there. But if you have, let's say, 3 big claims of $1.2 million, that could throw a $20 million health insurance fund budget out of whack pretty quick. I think based on trend analysis, we're in good shape there. I think based on analysis of what we're going to get in state aid, I think it's close. We may get a little more when they pass the budget, but that's not guaranteed. We do our best with the estimates in an effort to make sure that we have enough. And if we manage well and at the same time are fortunate and spend less than we expected, there's money left over at the end of the year, and it doesn't go anywhere but back to the kids as far as I'm seeing. If there's money left over, we can use it on things that are worthwhile in program and things that are better for kids. So the stewardship of the funds is sound from my belief and experience.
Again, our focus is, again, it's student-centered, right? I've said that from day one. From the first day I interviewed with you, and I think every day since. Every decision we make has to have students first, right? And that's exactly what our approach has been in designing this budget. How do we get students what they need? What are the programs that they need? How do we maintain the services that they need? How do we provide improvements to what we're doing now to help them progress? Again, not only academically, but in every facet of their lives and support our families. Again, on the health insurance side, we see the health insurance side in these giant numbers. But what we also have to remember is, and Pete's right, we have some of these giant claims of over $1 million. When I see $1 million claim, my heart breaks because someone is in chaos. You don't have $1 million claim without an absolute catastrophic event in someone's life. And sadly, our family has experienced some of that, meaning the collective Oswego family, because we've had some of those in this last year. But those come and go. It's not as if you have those consistently. And we, as hard as we try to predict and budget for, sometimes you can't. But we have talked a great deal about looking at those trends to try to make sure we don't get into a similar position that we were in this year moving forward.
Right. I know that state aid, and it'd be nice if we knew what we were going to get, and that'd be helpful. But like you said, it could be further on into the fall. How will we communicate for the community that's paying attention what that is? It's projected right now, but I would hope that we would clearly communicate what we did receive so that everybody understands, was our projection high and are we good, or was it low and, we got to tighten it up a little bit. But I'd like to be transparent and very communicative with when we get that, how that does fit into our budget.
So there are 2 key times when you talk about budget. There's this period of time where we're approving the budget for the next year, and then there's the fall in which we're finalizing. Again, it takes us till the fall to finalize the previous year budgets, and we do that all in public session to make it crystal clear. What's every dollar that we spent? Where's the additional? And then you all have to make decisions as to where do we place that money. So if we have additional funds at the end of that closeout period, then I come to you and say, hey, we have these funds, my recommendation is we place them in this reserve or that reserve. But that is always going to be done in public session. It's always going to be done based on your authority as the board. You are the individuals who ultimately make those determinations. I make the recommendation to you, but you make the determination. Other questions?
I just have, oh, go ahead, Dave.
With the health insurance, do we look in if it's cheaper to go back to the group, or is it in our best interest to stay self-insured?
Pete and I were having that conversation today. He and I have had a lot of conversations about examining every aspect of our budget, right? So one of my jobs is also looking for efficiencies across the board. And we start at our largest areas, right? And health insurance is that really big area. Now, historically, being self-insured has saved the district, I would estimate, millions, right? But we've run into some issues over the last couple of years that in the back of my mind, I feel like we need to do some investigating. Pete has already reached out to our third party and started that process a couple of weeks ago. So in the background, we have started some of that work. And as we get additional data and information, of course, we'll share that ultimately with you. But I have a fiduciary responsibility to you and the community to make sure we are constantly looking for those efficiencies, to make sure we're providing the best services that we can at the lowest costs possible. But there was definitely going to be more information on that, and I think that's a really good question to ask.
I just have one quick question. I wanted to comment that I really very much appreciate the 27 positions that you've identified that we're preserving, and I'm certain that the community will also appreciate that. But were there any other positions other than those 27 that were part of the funding that was provided through the pandemic?
So those are the 27 positions that were funded by those grants. So
Okay.
there was no additional.
There was no additional.
In this budget, there are some additional positions that we have built in, just based on some need. So for instance, there's an elementary section that we see an increase for just because of class sizes in one building.
Right.
There is at least one position here at the high school just based on enrollment and the course selections that we feel like we
Right,
really
okay.
need to add to, again, meet class size, what makes most sense for class sizes. But that should be happening every year. We should always have a budget line to address. Another piece that is always predicted, so we have our typical enrollment. I know who lives in Oswego right now. I can guarantee you that's going to change by September 1st. The number of move-ins and move-outs that happen over the summer, I might need to add 3 sections. I might need to add none. But we need to create a budget that addresses us to meet the needs of our community as it changes. And so I think we've done that.
So if I may, I think, Julie, would the, from your previous slide, would the 2 additional SROs, a district psychologist and a district social worker, those would also be additional positions?
Those are
that we're
all
adding?
additional positions, yes, yes. So right now we have, I think I misspoke last time. We have 4 SROs. We're adding, in this budget, I'm proposed to you 2 additional, district psychologist, and then a social worker.
And any any retirements, they're just filled positions. They're not
Correct.
a plus. I mean, that's just a vacated position that's filled.
Correct, correct. And anytime you have a retirement, the district might also see savings as a result of that retirement. Depending on how long an employee has worked within the district, there could be a significant difference between a brand new teacher entering versus a 35-year veteran who's retiring.
So I'll just say, thank you, from Julie's question, it hadn't been in the presentation, but looking at the high school teacher need or the elementary teacher need, just want to thank you for being thoughtful and looking at that, and so, yeah.
Yeah, we met, again, something that was new to the staff here was we did budget meetings really early on. We began in December and January. We met as an executive cabinet with all building principals, reviewing what their needs were from a budgetary standpoint, and then we met again to review sectioning. And we did that really early on, and that historically had been done very much later. The only way that we can build a budget is if we know what to be planning for. And so including each of the building principals in that process helped us to build a better budget, I think.
I'm interested in this topic, sorry. This will be my last question, though. When we talk about the sustainability of our school district, and not this year, it's very easy, I think, when we go out and you know, this tax levy and for the community members, that these are the bullet points. This is plus 27, plus 4, safety, all these things.
Yeah.
But like you said, year 2, year 3, year 4, I think that's the harder thing. We need to make that very clear and help our community understand what you're trying to build with Pete, so that we don't run into what we've seen on the news, which was eye-opening about a couple school districts that we're all very familiar with, and so that helps our sustainability. So how will we communicate that, Ray? Like, here's how we stay safe on year 2 and 3. You know what I'm saying?
Sure. So we will be presenting to you in the very near future that picture, that long-range fiscal plan picture. So you see what it is that we think we see. And again, remember, they're estimates. They're based on what we predict could happen as we move forward, and so we need to be thoughtful about that. So we will present that in open session to the Board of Education. And we can send additional information out to the community as well if you feel that that's appropriate. In addition to that, what I expect to present to you this summer, hopefully by June, is also a long-range facility plan as well. So the long-range fiscal plan and the long-range facility planning kind of have to go hand in hand. Because I think you all know our facilities have some significant needs. The last BCS identified $230 million worth of work that needed to be done within the district. Now, that shouldn't panic everyone, because there are districts across the state that are close to that $200 million. That's not an uncommon number, that really high number, because they're looking at every little thing. But what they don't always look at is some of the instructional spaces as well. Like what are some of the instructional needs? And for me, I've noticed a lot of what I would perceive as some instructional needs to address some of our instructional programming. And so I've connected with John Bick from Fiscal Advisors and asked him to help me develop a long-range plan to try to address those over the next 5 to 10 years. You're not going to get to everything, but so that you as a board can see what can we do, how large of projects, and then how do we fund those? Can we fund them all through capital reserve? And if so, how do you replenish capital reserve without going out to taxpayers over and over again? What are the options available to us? Because I feel like that's an essential piece that we have to get a better handle on, especially as we're developing future budgets. You're going to get sick of financial stuff soon.
Ray, I had one question. In terms of fiscal planning, what are you and Pete looking at in terms of years? 5 years?
5 years out, yes.
5 years out,
Yep.
okay.
And remember, one big piece, you know, it's been unsaid, but we all know it in this room. There's a pilot that's expiring that we're going to be negotiating next year. That's a pretty significant part of our budget. So those are, again, they're all unknowns. They're all unknowns. All set? Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Kilmer. We are to committee discussions. I believe the Visitation Committee has something. Kristen?
Thank you. The Visitation Committee visited the middle school last week. I want to thank Mary Beth Fierro for being the hostess with the mostest. She greeted us with a clipboard with an agenda, gave us a once a buck, always a buck magnet, and took us on a tour to do two things. First was to brag about the absolutely awesome stuff that's been going on there this year as part of the current capital campaign, show us the new spaces, how beautiful some of the new classrooms looked. We talked to some of the teachers who are on the receiving end of brand new classrooms, who told us how excited they were about what their new classrooms were, and all of the storage opportunities it gave them, how they felt that they were seeing a difference in their students and being in a new, more organized, clean, modern environment than they had seen in previous spaces. It was really great having had kids who've been through the middle school to see what great changes are happening there. The other thing she showed us was stuff that either was never part of the current capital campaign or unfortunately was taken out of the capital campaign because of things that developed over the course of the campaign that we definitely need to have our eyes on. Everything from some HVAC kind of stuff, boilers, things like that that are probably original to the building. And also, I've talked before about what I call hands-on learning spaces, the technology rooms, music spaces, things like that, that definitely need some attention to them. We had the opportunity to speak with 2 of the tech teachers, I think, actually 3, who talked to us about their spaces and sort of what their wishes were about new equipment, new tools, some upgraded space. And we also talked to the director of the orchestra, who expressed a desire that the room he uses be reconfigured as well. It's currently, it reminds me when I was in elementary school of what the theater looked like. It's like steps going down that you can sit on. And he said from a teaching point, it doesn't work real well to have the orchestra students there, that kids fall down the steps, instruments fall down the steps. And so we certainly need to look at how to change that a little bit. We certainly had some brainstorming about some temporary things that could be done to make it a little bit more obvious there's steps there, but we definitely need to be looking in our next capital campaign about these hands-on spaces and making sure that we're giving them as beautiful a learning environment as we're giving to our math classes and our English classes. But all told, again, I want to thank Mary Beth for being a great host and for the opportunity to see all the great things going on in the middle school.
Thank you very much, Kristen. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda. So I'm going to group these together, items A through E. So if I can get a motion for consent agenda items A through E, please.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Tom. Is there a second? Thank you, David. Any discussion?
Yeah, I just have a quick question. I feel like I constantly ask this question, and maybe Michael can help clarify, but the classroom reports, I know that the class of 2023, and we talked about this, I think, Pete, their line is empty. It's 0 now. And our last report, they had $33,000 or $3,500. That, it's my understanding, gets carried over to class of 2024. Do you know that, are you a senior? So do you know, are students being told that any fundraising or any money on their accounts that's left over, you have options other than having it passed on to the next year's class? Okay, that's the question I have. Right, it goes to the next year's class. So, I mean, only reason I bring it up is because, and I've said this multiple times, I always look at that beautiful sign that's outside, that electronic sign, and it's sponsored by a class of 1990-something, and they had funds left over. That's what they did with it. So it's definitely an option. I just know that students don't know that. So when you're fundraising and you're putting money in your accounts, the money that after you pay all the bills at the end of graduation, that any money left there, your class should have, that's how I understood it, right, Pete? The class should have the option of doing something like that.
So the advisor is responsible for working with the class officers, right? So it's the class officers that are going to decide that. And so typically, unused funds are going to the next class. However, if there are desires of a particular class, in my former district, I was a class advisor when I was a teacher. And my class officers were very focused on a class gift, and that was really important to them. And so they fundraised for that. But I also had classes where that wasn't a priority, and then they knew that their funds were going to help their classmates, whoever came next.
Thanks.
Okay. Is there any other discussion? Okay. Having heard none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Is there anybody opposed? Okay, motion carries. Next up is personnel. Mr. Syracuse.
September 1st, 1999, and she's retiring on July 15th, 2024. Under item B, we have a support staff retirement. Robert Russell, who's currently a senior custodian at the middle school. He began in the district on October 18th, 2000, and his retirement date is July 30th, 2024. So items A and B.
Okay, so if there's a motion for A and B, please. Thank you, David. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Sean. Any discussion?
Just like to, as always, say thank you very much. That's 25 and 25 years within this district, and we appreciate it. Thank you, and have a nice retirement.
Great. Anybody else? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? And motion carries.
Okay, the next group is items C through J as presented.
Okay, is there a motion, please, for C through J?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Tom. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Kristen. Any discussion? Heard none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Next up, Finance, Mr. Colucci.
First, we'd like to present item A to the board.
Okay. So can I get a motion to adopt the 2024-25 budget proposal and the 2024-2025 property tax report card as presented, please?
I'll move.
Thank you, Kristen. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Sean. Is there discussion? Kristen?
I just want to say that when I ran for school board, I was very clear hearing a message about things people thought our district needed to do. I'm very in tune with fiscal responsibility, and I believe that this budget is responding to what the community was asking for and doing it in a way that's fiscally responsible. So even though it may show that it's a increase substantially from our previous year's budget, I think that we're doing what we need to do to deliver the education that we all want to be delivering in this community.
Great.
If I could build off of that, and one of my last questions to Ray, it's not only about this year either. So the budget that we're presenting and the work that Pete and Ray have put into this is really for the sustainability of our district. So it starts this year, but it builds out in years to come. So the fact that we're communicating and that we have that vision and that we're getting stakeholder groups together and we're starting to build a plan, I mean, this is very positive in my first year here on the board, and I appreciate the work and really the vision of where we're headed.
Any other comment, question? Okay. All right, so this requires a roll call vote. So Diane, would you help with that, please?
Yep. Sean Callan,
Yes.
Julie Chetney,
Yes.
Tom Chapa,
Yes.
Dave Crisafulli,
Yes.
Jim McKenzie,
Yes.
Kristen Norfleet,
Yes.
Sean Onmet.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Under finance, we now present donations under items B through E.
Okay, so if I can have a motion for B through E.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Tom. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Kristen. Is there any discussion?
Just to thank everybody for the donations.
Thank you, David. Anybody else? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, motion carries.
And last, under finance, we present items F through N to the board.
Okay, so if we can get a motion, please, for F through N. Thank you, David. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Tom. Discussion? I'd like to say thank you for the scholarships that have been established. Acoustic Mega Jam and Mike Play Scholarship and the Thomas Galloway Memorial Scholarship. So thank you for helping our students. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Is there anybody opposed? Okay, motion carries. Next, we're student representative. Michael.
Thank you. So last night was the Math Honor Society induction ceremony. It went very well, I heard. So Friday is the Kindness Day celebration. So basically, it's going to be like a half-day, modified half-day schedule until about noon, and then there will be student-generated activities for people to participate in. And a former NFL player named Leroy Collins is coming to give speeches to the classes, so that will be cool. And all-county chorus also happened in Mexico on Saturday, April 13th. 4 of the 5 soloists who are chosen to win were from OHS. So our music department again shines through. And something I did just want to bring up on the side was going to different schools' tennis courts. Our tennis courts here at the high school are lacking. The paint is chipped all over the place. The nets have holes. There are dead spots. The courts at the middle school are very nice, but we don't play on those and we don't use those. And I know those are community courts. Those are what those kind of function as. But I just wanted to bring that up as something. So thank you.
Michael, you'll be happy to know that our final phase 4 of the current project, we are looking to replace those. You can come back and try them out when they're done.
All right, thank you, Michael. Other items from the board?
Okay. Yeah, I just have a couple of things. One from Oswego County School Boards Association event coming up on April 29th, Monday, April 29th. Just to send this out again, Julie, I think you're going to go, so want to drive out. It's Roseanne Bain will be presenting. It's at 6 p.m. out at City BOCES, and it's on bias. And if you have a brain, you have a bias. It's the title that she utilizes for it, which is going to be great. And the other thing I just wanted to bring up, last night I went to Central New York School Board's meeting, and there's a lot of topics and a lot of resources we can use. You'll should see some emails from them. So if you respond to the surveys in those emails, there are topics that come up that they can address. We can, in presentations, in events that they'll do, or even come to us potentially to work as workshops. And a couple of them, again, I just want to put this out there, needs that other surveys they've done already. Recruiting, retention, staffing is a highlight throughout districts everywhere, and the budget process for board members. Those are the 2 highlighted things. But there are a number of benefits that we can utilize from that. So if you respond to some of those emails and surveys, I think it will be beneficial.
All right, thank you, Tom. Anything else from board members? Okay. I have one thing. I'd like to talk a little bit about Education Foundation. The board has been talking a lot this year about interactions with the community. One of the goals that we had was to try to increase communication, increase everything that we do with our community. And while we have a wonderful community support for our athletics in the form of the Buck Boosters, we learned that there is a similar type of nonprofit ability for a community to come together to support a local school district. So in New York State, the community can form education foundations, they're nonprofits, that would allow the board of that foundation to coordinate. It's a separate entity, but to coordinate with the school district to support educational or other non-athletic, as a Buck Boosters would be supporting, but general district things that can be supported by the public. So we've been talking for a while about it, and I have been communicating with a few local foundations and their school districts. And so now I think we've gotten to the point where we have some information to put out to the community. If there are members that are willing to participate in a discussion, is this something that our community is interested in participating in? I think we are ready to have a discussion. And if it is something that the community is willing to do, it would be something that I think would be relatively easy to organize based on what I've learned from other places that have recently organized, and that we could then hand that off to that dedicated group of community members who would like to support our educational goals in the district. So that's my item. If people out there in the community are interested, please feel free to get a hold of me. Via email. You can contact the clerk's office if you don't have my email, and I'd be happy to discuss this with any member or groups that would like to be involved. Thank you. Okay. Any other items? Okay. Having heard none, we do have need for an executive session this evening for matters of collective negotiations pursuant to Article 14 of the Civil Service Law. So, is there a motion, please?
Motion.
Thank you, Kristen. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Sean. There will not be need for a vote afterwards, just to clarify. Okay, discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.